Hi, everyone. My name's Drew Hampton, and I'm a lawyer with the Legal Services Division here at the Nova Scotia Department of Justice. I'm sitting here with Augy Jones today. It's a very special moment and something I'm very excited for. As many of you know, and you can probably see here that it's African Heritage Month this month, and so this month the theme is Legacy in Action and celebrating Black brilliance. This is really a time for us to celebrate, like I said, legacy in action, the resilience, the innovation that has been demonstrated by members of our community. Um, Today, like I said, I'm here with Augy Jones. You are the Executive Director of African Nova Scotian Affairs.
Yes.
Awesome. And your parents would be Dr. Burnley Allen Rocky Jones and Joan Jones,
Yes.
two influential titans, not only in the legal community, but within the African Nova Scotian community here in this province. And so I'm extremely excited to talk to you today about your parents and the work that they have done, that they did throughout their lives, and the legacy that they left for generations that continues this day. So they're really truly pioneers and people that had a very huge impact on this province. Personally, I'm a graduate of the Indigenous Black and Mi'kmaq Initiative. I went to Dalhousie Law School, and the IB&M Initiative is a program that Joan and Rocky helped establish at the law school. And we'll come back to that because I think there are a number of different important topics that we can talk about in terms of the IB&M Initiative or in terms of the justice system. But yeah, we'll come back to that and talk a little bit more in detail. But I just want to mention that from my perspective, I can see that legacy in action and am kind of a testament to their legacy. So I'm very appreciative of the work that they did and who they are as people. Awesome. So I think it's pretty fitting today that we're in the Viola Desmond room. As you can see, we do have Viola Desmond on the wall behind us, and we're surrounded by a number of different pictures and images from Viola's life and from some of the things that happened to her as she went through that life. And for those who aren't aware or who don't know, Viola Desmond is an individual who was actually she was an African Nova Scotian woman who was going to see a movie at the Roseland Theatre in New Glasgow, Nova Scotia. And essentially, she paid for her ticket, and she sat in a section which was essentially labeled whites only. And she was asked to move, and Viola stood up for herself and for her rights and for her community, and said that she would not move. And so I'm super excited and super pleased that we're here in this room with you and surrounded by her legacy as well as you and your parents. So I think let's just jump right into things. And you had an opportunity to grow and develop with the guidance of obviously two parents who were prominent figures in the community and certainly great examples of Black brilliance. Your father, Rocky Jones, spent much of his life fighting for social justice for Black and Indigenous people in Canada, who's a strong voice in the areas of human rights, justice, race, and poverty. And as a lawyer, he focused his attention in all these areas, among others, and also advocated for prisoners' rights as well. And so I think let's just turn things over to you at this point. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about your father, Rocky, and where his life began. Just tell us a little bit about his journey and his story.
Well, I think about, Truro and we think about communities changing. I was at the African carriages at the gala this Saturday for the Black Cultural Center. And we're sitting beside a group of people on the table. And one of the moms was from Ford Street. So in the Marsh, which they called the Marsh in Truro, was a Black community. And so it's funny in retrospect you think about, because when we think about our parents, and I do want to start off by saying, your parents would be influential on me. So in our community, it goes around. So Dwight and Margot, I know, and through the basketball circles and through community-wide circles, so I know them. So, and we both have an X-ring, which means there's another community into it. So it just speaks to that kind of flow of, maybe we use the word legacy. All right, so when we think about my dad growing up in the Marsh, in small rural Truro, I think when we think about Nova Scotia, I like to frame it as, the U.S. kind of has that dynamic from north to south, right? And where our dynamic might be, I would say, more like west to east.
Yeah.
And so some of the similarities of Alabama and Mississippi and Louisiana exist in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick and PEI. A lot of people think Canada ends at Montreal.
Yeah.
So for me, growing up around my dad, the reality of it is the perception of Rocky Jones and the reality of Rocky Jones were not the same thing. So as a dad, it's a person who was a fisherman, loved country music, loved blues music, loved Africa, was very versatile in being able to talk to anybody. And when you're a little boy, you notice that, right? Like you notice that ability to, when you're communicating, you have to go to the level of the person, right? Whether it's up or down. And I saw my dad in high level circumstances, whether it's CBC interviews or at the legislature or, in law courts. And then I also saw him having a drink of rum and water and taking us fishing and he also did pheasant hunting. Like he was an outdoorsman.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a pretty humble vibe for kids. This was in the 70s for us. So, going out with dad in a canoe to fish. And then he tied his own fly fish. Yeah. Taught us to fly fish, but we also learned to, we could make our own flies and, things like that. So it's interesting that, Rocky the Revolutionary, that outer facing thing, is often something that he had to do the work. And I feel that now in 2025 in government. I mean, you often have to sit at tables and say things that people may not want to hear. And I think the more you say those things, the more the perception of you, even at work, when 2025 changes. But as a dad, that's a different thing, right? Because oftentimes as kids, we didn't know what our parents were doing. Like I knew it once I got to be 14, 15, that I could reflect on and was starting to get my self-identity. You're a young kid running around. You don't really know actually some of the dangers and some of the things that were going on around us based on Joan and Rocky standing up for certain things. So, my dad comes out of Truro, spends some time in the army, comes back and, charismatic guy, always had the je ne sais quoi thing. He's good with people.
Yeah.
What people may not know, and this is probably many mothers, is that, the foundation of dad's civil rights vision and commitment is from Joan.
Yeah.
So my mom was born in Boston. She grew up in Oakville, Ontario, and my dad was in Toronto, and at the time it was during the civil rights, and I know they were at the U.S. consulate. And there was something going on in Alabama where they were protesting against what was going on for African Americans, as African Canadians, and seeing the similarities. So I think at that point, my dad started to talk to my mom, and she was actually enlightening him on the civil rights movement, because my dad, that happened, that shift for him happened in Toronto. And so then he and my mom come back, in the late 60s to Halifax.
Yeah.
And he asked her to come back with him. And as we know, Nova Scotia is a lot different than Ontario.
That is.